Hello everyone. For this week's video I am doing something different, something I have not done before, which is do a deep dive into a track, a cool techno track, taking it apart and looking at all the details, all the things that make it work and make it tick, and analyze every part basically. And I'm going to share this one with you because actually, so this is the track In Silence by Amelie Lens, a famous track that was a big hit in the techno world in summer of 2017. Seems such a long time ago. Before it came out, Adam Beyer was basically playing it all summer and people were really enjoying it and was getting some hype. And then it was released in August of 2017 on Drumcode by Adam Beyer. And it was, I think, on a compilation, and it was definitely the best track on that whole compilation as far as I'm concerned. Not the biggest fan of Drumcode. The style is quite different from what I'm doing, if you know my music. But this definitely was one of those tracks that sort of, I think, transcends subgenres of techno. It was just very good. It still is very good. So what I did is I wanted to look at the arrangement and figure out how that exactly worked, and sort of trying to get an idea of how Amelie Lens came up with this great track, how she did it basically. And I devised this method, which I'm showing you now, which is just an Ableton Live project where I imported the original track. By the way, I'm going to share this project, of course, without the original track, but you'll get the rest and I'll show you what this is. So basically, all these tracks here are MIDI tracks with clips, and these clips are empty. They don't do anything. There are no VSTs on any of these tracks. They're just dummies, they're markers. And what I did, basically, I listened to the track and tried to pick apart all the different parts that are in the track and give them their own track here in the project and see when they are playing and what they are doing. So let's just go through this. I'm not going to play the whole track, but I'll play bits and I'll show you what I've been doing and why this could be useful. So, of course, this is going to be copyright infringement, but all the royalties will go to the right people. So, the intro here, and you can see this is what's playing right now. So I'll just stop it here. So of course there's a kick drum going on, and I think I labeled this kick sub. I think it's a kick drum. There's no separate sub bass. It sounds like maybe there is, but it sounds like she did the thing where you use a reverb on the kick to create sort of like an oomph in the second half of the track. I think this is something that she does often. I'm very tempted to solo this, but it's not going to help because this doesn't make the sound. All the sounds, of course, coming from the audio track here. So, but you can hear that, right? That's a very nice reverb on the kick, and that's probably doing all the work in the low end. And at the same time, there's the iconic Acid, the 303 synth that start with the most basic pattern, just a single note that fades in, and you can see that I labeled that fade in, and later I use some different colors because there's some stuff going on. It's not the same riff all the time. Then there's a shaker sound, and then there is ambient percussion 1 and 2. That's this one, and then the high one, I call them Q&A, ambient percussion question and answer. And straight off you can see the question thing is playing continuously and the answer thing comes in and goes away again. And then we start here. Here is a pretty standard 909 ride that's fading in. You can hear it softly, here it's harder. I mean, what can we say about the 909 ride? It always works. It's great. Then we come to a breakdown, and what I did here is, if there is a high pass on the kick, I made a white clip, and if there is no kick, no sub, then there's just a space here. And just if you zoom out, look at all of the track here, you can see there is lots of little and bigger breaks going on. And this is a style that is not so much like the most of the stuff that I am into, like the releases you get on labels like Soma and Paul Group. That would be more continuous. There will be, of course, breaks. There will be parts where the kick drops out or where there's a high pass. Oftentimes, pretty much all these tracks have a big breakdown somewhere around the middle or in the beginning of the second half. But this is, quite unique how many times the kick drops out or gets a high pass. And what it does is it makes it, there's many moments in this track, transitions, and I think the brilliant thing of this track is how it keeps sounding natural, not too abrupt, and it's a little bit like a story is being told. And it's of course a different style than this very sort of constant style where there is like the hypnotic thing, where there's very little changing and there's lots of layering going on that's coming in and out, sounds that are very slowly faded in. There's some of that here as well. There's also layering going on here, but you can see this style, it's a little bit more start-stop like, although I do think the track keeps flowing because of just a lot of good arrangement decisions. So a very long break here. Sorry for that long explanation. And this is where she starts with the vocal. Now there are two different vocal clips that I labeled different colors. Basically the light pink one is where she says "in silence," and the darker, violet, is where she says "I'm trembling." And straight off the bat, it's interesting how these are dotted around the arrangement, and it doesn't really seem to be an overarching structure to it, other than the second phrase "I'm trembling" is happening much less often and comes in later in the track. And this also, by the way, is a very nice classic example of question and response as a composition technique. So the answering phrase that's coming after something that is before, so question. So the question phrase is, it's not a literal question, but it's musically it's the question. It's opening up something. It's saying "in silence," and you're waiting for the response, and then the response is "I'm trembling," and that is the payoff. So the question sort of creates the tension, and the answer is the payoff of that tension. And you can see it's actually only coming around at like 2 minutes 45 in the track that you hear this answering phrase for the first time. So again, some really smart arranging by Amelie Lens. I mean, she is not popular for no reason. It's not because of her pretty face, although she does have a pretty face, but she's much more than that. And if you didn't believe me, I'm proving it to you now. So onwards. Here this long break ends and we go into a drop, and there's a different shaker part. I'll play the last, which is more of an eighth note part. And there's this really cool snare part happening here. By the way, so I forgot to mention the 303 part is changed to sort of the full riff with the high notes in it, sort of iconic thing that really makes the track. There's a lot of automation going on here, as you have to do with the 303. That's what it's about. It's about playing the filter, of course. But I just want to focus on this cool snare part here. There's a fill. These fills are less important, but they do, of course, a job. But listen to the snare here and what's happening here. So There's automation on the decay. So you get these short hits. You can make them so short that they sound like little clicks or like almost like hi-hats, and then you make them longer and you hear the full classic 909 snare sound. And then again we go into a short, reasonably long actually break, 4 bars, yeah. And this rim shot part adds in the background, sort of clicking. And here there's a lot of reverb coming in on the acid synth, and you hear this shh. So I made this a separate part, but I think it's a very big send reverb on the shaker part here actually. And it happens a few times in the track, here, and at the end. I first thought that this was a separate sound, but it's probably a reverb on the shaker. And this, of course, are the smaller details that can be hard to figure out in certain tracks. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that there's something extra here, and you see that represented here. And then again we go into a break where the vocal becomes a bit more frequent than the past part. There's some panning happening on the 303, or it's probably more than one 303 part. Not sure. Very nice how that snare leads into this drop, which is a very dry drop. There's not a lot happening. The 303 part is going back to the single note thing again. There is something like an ambient hit, or that could be the reverb tail from the snares, and then there's this note that just starts before the end, and that also repeats here, sort of ominous sounding. I think relative to the bass note of the 303 here, sorry, it is a minor second, so it's a half a tone higher, evil sounding interval. And then we go back into the percussion. It comes in, we get the riot again after a very short high pass break. And so throughout the track you see these things, they're coming, they're going. Now we get doubling or sort of an extra layer to the shaker. I named them 16th and 8th, which is not completely correct, but one has more like a continuous 16th feel and the other more of an 8th with accent note. Not sure if she says I'm trembling or and trembling, but that's the first time this happens. And again, a break, fading out of the right sound. And now the snare takes over again. Again with the automation on the decay of the snare. So always stuff is happening, things are moving, are slightly changing. Here there's this noise fading in again, which is probably the reverb on the shaker or shakers, which builds the tension again, adding the answer phrase in the percussion again, and a high pass again, and we go back to the vocals. This, by the way, this whole part was where again just a single note version of the riff, which also adds this tension, and now it's being changed again to the full version with the notes in there, which is again is a payoff. It's like a little reward for listening to this single note all the time. Okay, and then we go into a break where there is no more kick. Again, I think this note, I think that's here also, yeah. Yeah. Or I think I used that for, so that's a new fill sound. The snare again with the automation, and here building up, subtly building up also to the drop is this shaker pattern becoming louder. And very, very neat little clap fill, sounds like an 808 clap, or maybe a 909. I can't tell them apart. I only know that I like the 808 better. I think it's an 808, which does the same thing as the little snare fill here. And then we go back to the 303 that was gone for a little bit. And now the rest of the track, there are no really new parts introduced anymore. It's a repeat of all the stuff that's been going on. And you can see the Riot is giving some high energy to the track. Later on here, after again a high pass kick break, it's going to be the snare combined with the shakers propelling the track forward. Again, very nice that automation on the snare decay. And this is, which also a very important point, this sounds very much like automation by hand. So using a controller or using the decay knob if you have a drum machine. I don't think she did this with an original 909. Who cares? I've seen pictures of her studio from this era, and I think for the 303 she used the Roland Ira TB3 it was called, I think, the little green box with the weird touchscreen that a lot of people don't like, and I think she used that, and that just proves that, you know, all this discussion about analog hardware being necessary, having an original 303, it's irrelevant. There's nothing wrong with an original 303, but you don't need it to make very, very good acid style stuff, and this proves it. So what else? Not much here, just little variations. You can see the vocals are now call, response, so, or answer, question, answer, question, answer. So that's like a payoff that we get now. And here basically we start the outro. We do have the shakers still going, but no more snares or rights. Again, the bass 303 is back to the one note pattern with not a lot happening. And it's just punctuated by the vocals. And again, you can hear some automation on the shakers here, some filters. I forgot to mention that earlier. It's that reverb again, the openness fill, and now it just goes to really like the second half of the outro, where the energy is taken away by the high pass filter on the kick on the low end, and it's just winding down. Again, very nice to have this automation on the shakers, this filter opening. I think it's low pass, just to give it a little bit of movement and not make it a boring 15 seconds. And then that's basically it. So that's my rundown of this track. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was useful in some way. Again, this is quite different from the stuff that I make. And by the way, I don't pretend to make music anywhere near this good, because, you know, this is just brilliant. But it's also a little bit different style from what I'm doing. I don't think that's important. I think what's important, what's really interesting here, is just looking at these arrangement techniques, tricks that are being used by someone who really knows what she's doing. And it's really fun, I think, learning this stuff. So you can do this yourself. You can take a track you like, import it into a session in your favorite DAW, start listening, start pulling apart the different parts, making dummy MIDI clips to show where they are and where they're not. You can use some color variations if there's important automation or the parts are changing, like the acid riff is changing here. And I plan on doing this some more. I hope you like this. Let me know in the comments. Do you want to see more of this stuff? Are there other tracks that you would like to see in particular? I'm very open to suggestions. I'm already thinking about the next one. This one I made actually a few years ago, but I'm going to do this more often if people like it. And again, I'm going to make this live set available for download, excluding the original track, of course, because I'm not going to steal someone's work. This is all for instructional purposes only. So thank you very much for watching. Again, let me know what you think, like and subscribe and all that good stuff, and I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.